What is up, Sixth Man? And we are finally back with our fourth installment of Fans Corner. Joining us today, and he's not a bandwagoner. You know, they've started doing well this season. Is my good friend Carl Evans, who I met because our nans are best mate. Isn't that right? Shout
out to Mari. Yeah, shout out to Mari if you're watching.
Shout out to Mari and Pam. They probably, to be honest, you know, my nan definitely couldn't work the Wi-Fi. She probably doesn't know what's going on. But that's how we met. You're obviously a Utah Jazz fan. At least you're getting success in some sport where you're failing in another. We're obviously speaking of Arsenal, which obviously you're a fan of that. But yeah, thanks for joining the pod. Because of the Jazz and how well they're doing this season, we've obviously got our Utah Jazz correspondent, House Lasky, here joining us with one of the picks in the sixth-man draft, one of the best picks in the sixth-man draft. So what we do when we talk about Fans Corner, we go into the background of how you got into basketball. Was it from a playing standpoint? Was it for just watching highlights? Yeah, tell a little bit more about yourself.
I mean, I think if I'm honest with you, I think it's actually you who got me into basketball. We must have been about 5 or 6 years old playing in your old back garden. I remember you hit me with an Allen Iverson crossover, and ever since that day, I've been on a vendetta to play you again 1v1, but you've been avoiding me. I think then didn't see you as much at school. Then I met you, I reckon around 2011, maybe. I think we played NBA 2K11 at my mum's house at the time. And I think that's, again, what kind of reignited that passion for basketball and got me back into it. I mean, you must have beat me by at least 40 or 50. It was a blowout game, but that's what probably got me back into it. Then we started watching more and more basketball. I remember, sounds quite a weird reason to pick the Jazz randomly. Obviously, I haven't got any ancestry or heritage family-wise supporting Jazz, but I remember watching it. They play and Andre Kirilenko, AK-47. Always admired that. And then also that same year, there was a player called Evans, happened to be in the NBA draft in 2010. Jeremy Evans,
the dunk contest.
Yeah, he won the dunk contest as well. And I was like, that's it then. It's meant to be. If it's Evans and AK-47, I'll go for the Jazz. And obviously back then they were a playoff team, and then they had a few years off before then. Coach Quinn came in and took them really to the next step. Now we've seen in the last couple of seasons more consistent, and this year I don't think anyone expected this kind of forward leap from the Jazz, but it's kind of been the three ride or die that's taken us there, really.
Yeah, because I was speaking to Foley and I was saying I'm jumping on the call with Carl, and I was like, he's a Jazz fan. He's like, is he a Jazz fan? Because, you know, they're somehow all of a sudden good. So that's good, the fact that you are able to clear that up. Another question I wanted to ask you, Carl, wasn't Gordon Hayward around at that time?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and I'd still, ironically, I'd still take him back now. I know he didn't leave very well in good terms with the Jazz, but in terms of looking for players in forward position, probably that power forward spot, I'd still take him back now. He was something that obviously that was our all-star. That was the franchise player for a number of seasons before. Then we had Mitchell and Gobert in recent years.
So the first question I was going to ask you is, who do you say is let's answer two questions. Who is the GOAT of Utah, and who's your favorite player? Who's your personal favorite player?
I think the GOAT of Utah, you can only really look at, there's been no ring, there's been no franchise win. So you've got to look at probably the best periods of Jazz history, and you've got to look at the 90s. So it has to be between probably Malone and Stockton. But if you can talk about longevity and consistency over time, I don't think you can look any pass or look any further than John Stockton as a GOAT. My favourite player, again, I said it previously, there probably would be Andre Kirilenko in previous times. Obviously, now it's looking towards Donovan Mitchell as the one that's kind of the exciting franchise player.
What do you like about AK-47? Why does he stick out?
I guess it became a bit like a cult hero, a bit like an icon. He was just, I think, in terms of shooting the three, he was more consistent, powerful, can get stops on the other end too. He was kind of all-around player, that two-way player that the Jazz didn't really have apart from that to bring the team forward in that 2000s era or early 2010s.
Nice.
I mean, there were a few good players in that time. I think back to Deron Williams or C. Booz, maybe even Derek Favors has been consistently quite good, but it probably was that Kirilenko Hayward have been the best two, probably in the 21st century anyway, that way.
Yeah, I love that answer though, because it's very low key and only true fans will know like what AK-47, what he could do, and just shutting down people. Now, Carl, we know that we know you talk a lot of talk a lot of shit, you know. Well, I know this personally. A lot of people probably don't know this. I want you to put a Jazz player on blast. Who do you think is the most overrated Jazz player of all time?
It's difficult in the modern era. I think what makes the Jazz, they are a good team. I don't think there's anyone that particularly pulls the side down. But I think if you can look at iconic players, so in terms of like NBA legends, I think Pistol Pete is definitely an NBA legend because of what he could bring to the game, the show plays and all the highlights and the deep threes. But he's really just jacking up 25 feet threes. There's not really, I'd say, him being a top 10 all-time Jazz player, although he's in most people's list. Pistol Pete, yes, I know he gives you the highlight reels, but I wouldn't say he's particularly a great NBA player, maybe a great highlight player. That makes sense. Ooh. Probably a big shout. I'll probably get a lot of hate for that, but
are you saying he's the if he was playing the NBA right now, he'll be Mario Hezonja? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I don't know, but I don't think that he offers both ways defensively. I think it was more there like a character by his franchise player to get tickets in, to get the exposure, but not particularly a consistent basketball player you'd want in your side now, certainly.
The way that you're wording it also seems like if he was jacking stuff up, it was like Steph Curry or Trey. Yeah.
So who's then, we've spoken about overrated, who's a player then you felt maybe that you've been watching or maybe historically you feel was a bit underrated or underappreciated?
I think Joe Ingles goes under the radar a lot. I mean, if you look at true shooting, his percentages are really good. I think this season's something like 50% from three, which is just crazy this season to think about. And obviously he's been there such a long time. If you actually look at the NBA stats, I think he's up there. He must be top 5 3 points made for the Jazz now. I mean, Mitch will be catching him, but he'll be up there in terms of shooting. I know he's not, and I'll probably criticize myself later on, be a bit hypocritical and ask him to do more rebounding, more defensive work. But in terms of underrated, I think he goes under the radar. Probably also Royce O'Neal in this team, because you've got 4 shooters on the floor. I think he goes very, very much under the radar. If you think about the defensive end, he's really, really good. And for a 6'4" guy, he can rebound as well, which I think is something that Jazz need to do, stop offensive rebounds to go towards that next level. But in terms of defensive work, I think he doesn't get quite the recognition that you get because of you have Jordan Clarkson from the bench, because you've got Mitchell, because you've got Conley, because you've got Gobert. Perhaps Royce goes under the brackets because he doesn't hit that stat line of double-doubles every single game.
On Joe Ingles, when I was watching Utah play, I loved their pick and roll action with Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert. They're so nice working together on a pick and roll, and it's so hard to stop because the defenders don't really know what to do when they come across him.
And it's a bit like, I mean, I think the best in the league, one of the best in the last 10 years of doing it, is Chris Paul with the pick and roll. It's the intelligence to read the plays and the way that Chris Paul can manipulate the game. I think not many point guards have got that true basketball IQ potential. But again, you're right, that link up between Gobert and Joe Ingles certainly works so well. And that's been a great success part of this season and last season, the last couple of seasons as well, where they've done quite well.
Chris Paul definitely got you last night, didn't he? Turned up in the clutch as well.
That super stuff.
I love that.
That's a shout out for the Space Jam too. There's got to be some sort of appearance taking place there.
Maybe he's pissed that he didn't make the cut. I don't know.
I reckon he'll be in it somehow.
Yeah, but him and LeBron are like really good friends. That's really interesting about Ingles. I definitely agree with you there. And Royce O'Neal, having that player who can really defend the superstar on the other team is going to prove pivotal for the Jazz in terms of playoffs. I love this question. Give me your all-time starting 5 for the Jazz.
I think it's a little bit easier with Jazz because there's not been that long-term success. So I think the point guard picks itself with John Stockton, mentioned him before. I mean, I know I don't know as much going back through history, but I'd still say Jeff Hornacek has to be at the shooting guard. I'll probably get a lot of abuse for this. I know I should probably say Adrian Dantley, but I don't know as much about him at the power forward position. So what I'll do is I'll move the man himself, the AK-47, into small forward. And that will then allow me to get in Karl Malone at the power forward slot and probably put Rudy Gobert in that central spot. Apart from those bigs, Karl Malone, Rudy Gobert, we don't really have that many bigs in history that have been that great. I mean, Derek Favors, probably because he's been there for so long, would be in your top 10 Jazz list. Maybe Carlos Boozer, but perhaps not in his prime in the Jazz as well. So I'd say, yeah, that'd be my 5. Stockton, Hornacek, AK-47, Karl Malone, and Rudy Gobert, Stifle Tower at centre. So not a bad 5. I know it's not the same as
no Donovan.
Not at this stage. Give me 3 or 4 years time, and I'm sure I'd put him in there at the shooting guard position.
One thing I want to ask you is obviously Utah haven't had their best time the past, let's say, decade or so. Who's been your biggest draft disappointment? I've got a couple that just spring to mind automatically. I remember an Aussie guy who you may think, or some other players. I think, just want to see who you think of biggest draft disappointment.
I think in terms of hype, Dante Exum was really looked at as being the guard that would come in and take the Jazz to the next step, but through injuries or whatever, it just hasn't worked out. And I think that for me was a big draft disappointment, certainly, because it just didn't happen for him, the Jazz.
Wasn't Cantor also drafted by Utah?
Yeah, number 4.
Cantor, I think he was the year before, around the same time as Gobert, but Gobert was pretty much playing as a backup to Enes Kanter for the first couple of years, and then Gobert broke through, and then I think Cantor got traded to the Thunder as well. But maybe a disappointment in the fact that we even let him go. We could do with another decent backup big. I know they brought in Ilyasova, but he won't get that many minutes. And Favors is more of a. I mean, Favors is a decent big. I mean, in terms of you look at most teams will take him at power forward or centre, but he's not at maybe at a championship level second team you need to try and kick on from the bench. But maybe Enes Kanter. You're right. I think Dante Exum comes to mind as the first one. I thought, yeah, it's a shame it didn't work out.
Yeah, just looking at some others. You've got Trey Lyles. Who else do you got?
Yeah.
Oh, you traded Josh Hart. Oh gosh. My boy Grayson Allen.
Grayson Allen.
Oh, Grayson Allen as well. Yeah, he's come on, but it wasn't. I mean, there's blips the Jazz where he shows certain shooting instances, but didn't really kick on either.
Yeah.
So I don't kick myself in terms of Grayson Allen either, particularly. Although I think he's quite good at trash talking, which is always welcome as well.
Jacksonville boy.
Let's move to the current roster. So you've obviously got your main number 2, your big 2, which is Donovan and Rudy. Outside of that, who is the most valuable player on the Jazz? Who is going to take you guys to the next level?
I mean, if you look at, the name would be Mike Conley, but then if you look at when Conley's not there, we still seem to do okay with Donovan at the point as well. So I think I'd go Jordan Clarkson, and his importance is that role playing where he comes in every night, and that's his game style when he comes in the second unit and then puts up numbers. If he's shooting 20, 30 plus, we usually win. If he's had a bad night shooting from 3, you're looking around single digit points. We don't tend to do as well. I think I'd say he's probably an equally important player. If we were to lose him, I think that second unit doesn't seem as powerful coming onto the pitch. If you look at Joe Ingles, obviously second unit as well, Niang, Favors, Clarkson. I think Clarkson's that one that drives that second unit when he comes in, and he plays starter minutes, really, think about it. But I think probably he'd be my third most important player to the sides.
Oh, do you think you rely too much on Jordan Clarkson?
I don't think so, no. I think what makes the Jazz so good is because that they are the team. I mean, they always seem to have 4 shooters on at all points and play. Obviously, this year, even more so. I mean, Coach Quinn suggested it over the summer they were going to come back and play the 3 ball. So I wouldn't say we rely on him too much. I mean, he does get his shots and we go to ISOs, but I think that's why people sometimes sleep in the Jazz and call them a fake 1 seed, because there isn't perhaps that showtime big hero player that's going to drop 40, 50 every night. But they are a team, and I think that's what makes them quite well is the ball movement, defensive movements. I know it's not been at points it would drop naturally. And I think because it is the 3 ball percentage, we're going to go through peaks and troughs. So just before the All-Star break, we lost a couple of games, obviously on a two losing streaks, 2 poor shooting nights really against Dallas in the week, and then the Suns last night. That's going to happen. It doesn't concern me. If you look at even the big away fixtures, I think we took we lost the Clippers by 4. Your team, Philly, overtime loss last night. The Suns overtime loss. So even when we're not shooting well, we're not getting blown out by these big teams. So it doesn't concern me long. I'm just going to try and enjoy it for now. I don't know how far we go. First round, second round, is that progress? It just looks like a good NBA playoffs. I think it's quite an equal year all round, really. I think if the Lakers are healthy, I'd still back them coming from the West. You've got the Clippers still, Suns, Jazz. I mean, I even enjoy watching, of course, Trailblazers and Dame. So there's quite a lot.
And Denver. Got to look out for Denver.
Yeah, well, I mean, they beat us last year in the playoffs. And Jamal Murray and you know how good Jokic will be in the playoffs. So they're definitely contenders. Equally as fun in the East. Think about Miami. Yeah, they're a 500 team just over right now, but they're way better than the 500 team. They've had COVID issues, injuries, etc. Obviously, Philly having a good season. The Bucks will still be up there with Giannis in the playoffs. I mean, the list could go on. Nets have obviously got all the big names now. It's just quite an exciting. It's nice to have basketball back, and it's quite a nice, exciting year, I think, to look towards the playoffs. Just to see what will happen, really.
So, who would be a player you would want to go on a night out from the current roster?
If I set on a night out, I think it's Joe Ingles. When you look at his interviews, when you look at his personality, he brings that a bit extra, a bit of laughter, a bit of fun. I think Joe Ingles would be the one from the Jazz for a night out.
On the other hand, who would you clash with the most in the locker room? This could be playing. You know, they're playing ahead of you, or they're just not pulling their weight. Who would it be?
I think because of my style, I'm very much, I think, a passive-aggressive player in terms of any sport I try and use my small size to my advantage. I'd probably end up clashing with Royce O'Neal. We'd have those intensive D matchups. There could be some scraps there, but nothing personality-wise, I don't think. Probably just similar outrages. I mean, I've played Alex many a time and gone into Pat Bev mode. Tried to just take him out. Wiping out Sam Piercy as well in my prime. Probably Royce O'Neal.
And Jones. Yeah.
And can't touch Jones too quick.
Again, speaking of the current team, who's a non-all-star like the Jazz to trade for? Who's a missing piece that you think may help push the team to another level?
I think the weakest position for the Jazz is probably that bigger forward slot where you're looking for someone to try and get offensive rebounds and stop second chance points. So you've got to look for a forward. Now, in terms of forwards that haven't been an all-star, I think two come to mind. I don't think the second one's been an all-star. Definitely Tobias Harris this year's kicked on with the Sixers, and you can see what he can do. But I'd also think, now I don't know if he'd fit as well, but perhaps even Jeremy Grant this year. I think he was quite underrated at Denver Nuggets because he didn't get as many perhaps opportunities on the ball. But in terms of you can see what he can do now he's moved on, perhaps Jeremy Grant. I mean, if it was a non-all-star this year, I'd love to have someone like Chris Middleton in. But in terms of players who haven't been an all-star, we're probably looking at Tobias Harris, Jeremy Grant, one of those two as these bigger forwards. I mean, I know Gordon Hayward said it before, has been an all-star before, but I'd take someone like that, not an all-star this year, again back.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because thinking about it, I don't know, outside of Gobert, like which other forward, maybe Joe Ingles, scores more than 10 points a game for Utah?
There's not Bogdanovic can light up, but not particularly.
I've got my fancy this year. God, I mean, don't get me started on him.
Inconsistency, turnovers as well. We won't go there. I think
he was
Niang coming from the bench to get double digits. Sorry,
he was killer before his injury.
I mean, he scored a couple of buzzer beaters last year as well. He came absolutely clutch in the fourth quarter, but not been at quite the same level. I mean, he gets angry if he gets asked in the presser about the hand and its difficulties. I don't think that's the real issue. I don't know why he's not been as consistent. I mean, I think he's better when he doesn't hesitate and he just shoots. Quicker release is better. But it's just sloppiness, turnovers this year, a little bit more lethargic. But I'm sure, I mean, he'll come good later on. Again, he's still a good option to have in the last fourth quarter. I'd still put him in the closing unit, certainly. I know Coach Quinn's kind of been really, I think, rotating with that final fourth quarter side to try and see who are the best five to close out games. But I still think he should be in that final five for closing out games.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your current season. The Jazz sit at the top of the West. Your current record as we're speaking now is 38-13. What has gone well for the Jazz? There's obviously been a lot, but what do you think in particular this season?
Yeah, I don't think anyone saw it coming top seed. I'll be honest. I didn't see it coming. I thought there'd be a decent playoff side, 4th, 5th, 6th, around that kind of area. Again, first round team. Now, I think perhaps what's helped this year, I know Conley's been out, but the consistency with the pairing of him and Mitchell, it didn't quite happen as much last year through injuries. So I think Conley and Mitchell together has worked well. But I think, again, it's just that ball movement has been so much better, so much quicker this year. And I think it's the fact that they have gone ride or die on the three. I know there'll be nights where they don't shoot well. If you look at last night, something I think it was like 11-3, something, one of the worst ones they've done for a while. But that's the way it's going to be. With the three ball, it's going to be a lower percentage. But if you get it right, they're going to become a bit like the Heat last year. They can become very, very streaky very quickly. But that's probably the success. It is just the coaching to go, do you know what, we're going to go to the three. And if it goes well, it goes well. If it doesn't, we're going to have up and down nights. But actually, I think it's gone much better than everyone else thought. I think most nights they probably average around 40% or just over 40% from three, which is a decent ratio and will get you quick buckets.
That's not just decent. That is amazing. I was reading an article on The Ringer, and there were some numbers I just want to throw at you. So Utah will potentially be the first team in NBA history to go 50% attempts of 50% of their total attempts coming from three, shooting it at 40%, which has never been done before. The Houston teams of the past couple of years, so 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, have all shot more than 50% of their shots from three-point range, but they've only maxed out at 36% from three. Utah are currently shooting 49% of their shots from three and hitting it at 40% clip, which is just
crazy to think. I guess it's because think about these great three-point shooting team. I mean, Warriors come to mind with Clay and Steph as well. Like you said, Houston when Harden was there. Perhaps just because they've got one or two focused players, where more as the Jazz always have four shooters on the court at any time. So there's always some sort of look that can be generated, whether it's pick and roll or ball movement that can get to the open man. That's why they've been so successful from the three. The ball movement has been really, really good.
Yeah, that's the massive thing that stands out for me, like the ball movement compared to the Rockets team, which is very much let Harden operate and then we'll get a three out of that. That's what the Jazz are doing really well.
So speaking on the other side, something that I've spoken about a little bit before, what are some of the things that haven't gone well this year?
I think it is the offensive rebound, stopping second chance points, perhaps even transition defense sometimes can get lost. And I think in big moments, knowing when to release the ball. So turnovers from, and I won't slander Mitchell at all, but turnovers from Mitchell, turnovers from Bogdanovic has cost us at times. I mean, I know they won't particularly pick up many steals as other teams because they've got this drop coverage, but Rudy Gobert has that rim pressure and presence. But probably, I mean, any team can avoid turnovers. I think even free throw percentage has got better. If you look at Gobert, I think one question mark around him was his free throw percentage, but that has come, I don't know the stats, but I think it's come a long way anyway visually this year as well. So I'd probably say stopping second chance points, getting the offensive rebounds and getting the ball back in Jazz's hands will go a long way, especially come the playoffs.
Something I've spoken about is late game execution, and I felt that at times the Jazz just haven't performed in the clutch. I've mentioned some of Donovan Mitchell's stats and his performances. Well, I mean, that got part of it got shattered yesterday when Donovan Mitchell did hit that three against Phoenix. But how do you feel about overall Utah's late game execution? They haven't been in many close games, so there's not a massive sample size, but that's something
that's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't mind some close games. If you look at, we haven't won an overtime game since 2018, something crazy like this, and those clutch moments. But I think they're still working out what the closing unit is. There's a lot of experimentation with it, and I think we're in that position now where the playoffs are secured. It can kind of be rotating and see what the best five gets, but you've got to have close games for that. So if you're blowing out teams, I mean, particularly at home, they've been so good at home, but in these big away matches, it'll be interesting to see what they go with and the moments they put on. I mean, I know Donovan Mitchell got a lot of slander in the press, and when we win games now, he's saying hero ball, making jokes out of it. But I think hopefully we can get some decent away games in that are close, so they get that experience ready for the playoffs. I mean, last year they blew the lead against Denver 3-1 up. And in those clutch situations, I know Denver was so good in the playoffs coming back, but it'd be interesting to see where they go in that fourth quarter, which unit is put out and where whose hand the ball's in.
I do think the Utah were a little bit short of a couple of players that would have really had a massive impact. Mike Conley and Bogdanovic being out, I reckon they could have easily won that series. But
I mean, if Mike Conley hit that three, it's a different playoff completely.
One final thing I want to ask is, there aren't too many Utah fans, which has been an ongoing joke in the NBA community. Oh, yeah. I want to know what your thoughts are on, firstly, the LeBron James sort of nobody wants to play for Utah thing, and secondly, I've spoken a little bit how I really want the Utah players to have an attitude where they're like, fuck everyone, fuck this, fuck that, and just really have some dog mentality. Can you give your thoughts on firstly what LeBron said, and secondly just the overall attitude of Utah players?
I mean, I think it is that case of the small market, small franchise doesn't have that grip. So if you think about like free agents, they want to go to Miami, they want to go to Los Angeles, etc. They've got that kind of market. So I can get where the jibs and jabs.
Tell them how you really feel, Carl. Tell them how you really feel.
With the LeBron's comments, he's earned enough respect to have a pass.
This is way too professional. I'd be raging.
I'm not fussed about the comments. I'm not gonna call him out, but yeah, hopefully they can use it as a chip on their shoulder. I mean, I know Shaq's comments towards Donovan as well. They do get a lot of, but it'd be good. You're right. They develop that.
Not Donovan, Gobert. What he's been saying about Gobert is so much worse. Like Shaq's just checking a lot of shit about Gobert, which is completely.
He does it about any big man.
He's got to make anything to keep reputation good and to keep the Shaq's in the fall going to keep his reputation up. I mean, I hope, like you said, they use it as a chip on their shoulder. They can use it to become those dogs in those playoff moments. If they're against key players like LeBron, they can use that as fuel to fire them up. But I think that will help bring them closer together if they've got that kind of mentality that they are Utah, they're underrated, etc. And even Conley with the NBA All-Star draft snubs before. I know he was in it this year, but that's probably been for him something that's kept driving him forward. I know I listened to him on JJ Redick's podcast as well. He was talking about how one year he was snubbed for I think it was the Nowitzki, I think, with the Mavs, and they didn't have a good season, and still continuously, and it kind of kept driving him forward. So hopefully these little kind of disrespectful comments can drive them forward towards that next step and have that good playoff run.
When Utah do go down, they have a loss. I'm interested for Utah's team. Who do you reckon the vocal leader is in that locker room when they're down, let's say 20 points at half? Who's the player that's having a go at everyone and shouting them, telling them to fix up? Who do you reckon that is?
That's a really good question, because I honestly probably couldn't give you the answer.
I see, it's obvious.
Who do you think? Donovan?
It's Donovan Mitchell. 100%.
He's the one who seems. I mean, when it's in a tight game, he'll get the ball.
He's the alpha.
He's the one. But if you look at, I don't think any of them are particularly vocal. Maybe you're right. Donovan Mitchell's the one that would carry them. Here, the ball will be in his hands if it's the one to get a bucket in the last minute or in the clutch periods. Probably going to be him, even though he's so young in that team. Probably is the one that's driving force.
Carl, I want to, before we go on to something fun, first of all, I want to give you your roses. Carl is an avid listener of the pod, and with all of the Photoshop stuff that's happened to contestant, it was Carl who did it. So I'm going to give you your roses for that. That's all you.
Thank you. Mainly the expensive Bray, anytime.
Yeah, no, but this is the other thing, right, man? I want to give you the opportunity to put somebody on blast. And I also want you to tell me, I think we should start doing this. Who do you think's actually going to win the sixth man?
Come on, don't make him answer that. It's a rhetorical question at this point. Come on.
I've always backed House Lasku, not just because he's in front of me, but because of the Jazz as well. I'm having a look at the rosters again now and just double checking who I think in terms of regular season. I mean, it is so tight, but you'd like to think that, I think with the Lakers injuries, probably Lasky wins the regular season. In the playoffs,
can you give me some advice? Can you give me some advice? If you had the first pick of the playoff draft, who would you pick?
This is just like shoot your shot. You're asking us for the answer.
Depends who's healthy. I still think a healthy Lakers with AD and LeBron can go very deep, if not win it. If I had to go from the East, I think, sorry, Alex, probably I'll jump on the hype and probably go for the Nets if I had to. I think because of the depth they've added as well, gives them that one extra step. But a healthy Lakers, I don't think you can look past them.
Let's talk about how bad Salt Gray is.
He was given it the big one. I'll admit it in the draft. Yeah. He came in very cocky and arrogant, but how can you be with that ratio of 0.404? Even the Heat, his bandwagon team, are disappointed. I know they've had reasons for it.
Yeah.
There were some awful choices. The Timberwolves. I mean, the Rockets confused me with the draft pick. Indiana, underwhelming again. Celtics, underwhelming. I think, are there any actually decent teams he picked? Possibly Miami. Apart from that, there's not much. I mean...
You said it all, man. That's all I wanted.
Reputation, just poor form all round. You're losing to the Lancashire Lambeer, and that guy only watched basketball 2 years ago.
That's what we wanted. That's what you wanted.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, my
where have you
screen's on.
gone?
I will not have any Lancashire Lambert slander.
No, but it's not even slander. It's all
I
Bray,
think
man.
if Bray was a player, he would be Kenny Olynyk. I think similar style, similar performance.
Like Kenny Olynyk's actually
nothing
playing
special.
quite well at the moment. But yeah, he's on the worst hit. He's on the worst hit.
Well,
So
has his peaks and troughs.
on one of our deadline day videos, we spoke about the Heat and Bray was shitting on Kelly Olynyk, and we got a comment from one of the viewers who were like, Kenny Olynyk is actually pretty good. Like, don't be shitting on him. And I was like, oh gosh, I get that showed Bray again. Not even the fans,
No.
not even the viewers like Bray. Gosh.
Well, it's an ongoing joke for us, an ongoing truth that he's not even his girlfriend's family's household favorite. One of my mates is definitely the favorite child. I think Bray's on the periphery. He tries to take him out, tries to make dinners, get their early family holidays, but it's just not happening for the poor guy.
All right, I think Bray's had enough, bless him. Mr. Evans, as you know, we do have some little fun segments just to test everyone's knowledge and Wildy. So I've got a category here for you on the Utah Jazz, and we're going to be doing step up to the line. So the way this will work is I'll give you a category. You can name as many things from that category as you like. Every question you get right is a point. If you get something wrong, you lose all your points. You get 0 points, and the game is over.
Oh.
So at least you'll be able to listen and understand the question compared to some other people. Great. So what I'm looking at right now is how much should I do? Okay, I'm going to do top 30. So in front of me, I've got the top 30 point scorers for the Utah Jazz. Again, you can say as many names as you want. Correct answer is a point. If you want to stick, you can stick, and then we'll have your score at the end. So anyone in the top 30, and I like to give people a reference point. So 32, the player in 32 has got 3,035 points. Player in 30th has got 3,250 points roughly.
Oh, so it's not a lot, is it? Really, think about 3,000.
I am not going to say anything. So it's 3,000 points scored for the Utah Jazz. So start whenever you like.
So if I get one wrong, I lose it all. Is that the idea? Yes,
and you don't get to start again, right? Alex, I put the list in the doc.
Amazing. Under which sheet?
I hoped you were going to say the chat then. Right, good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get the obvious ones out of the way first. Stockton.
Dante Exum, yeah.
Carmelo.
Yeah.
Adrian Dantley.
Yeah, we got 1, 2, and 3.
Very nice.
Okay, missing some big ones. Pistol Pete, mentioned it before, be up there.
Yeah.
Gordon Hayward will be up there.
Hayward is number 8.
Andre Kirilenko.
Andre
Trying to think who's been there for many seasons now. Jeff Hornacek, Gobert.
Just
is 13th.
Just be careful because you're throwing these names out, and I'm like, just be careful because
Gobert,
once you get to that score,
17th.
Longevity.
17th.
Longevity. Joe Ingles should be in there, I'm guessing.
Number 22.
Oh, okay. Derek Favor's been around longer than Joe
Number
Ingles.
11.
Carlos Boozer, Seabooze.
Number 14.
Have I said Gordon Hayward already?
Yes. Yeah, you said it right off the Pistol Pete.
Darren Williams.
Nice. Yeah, number 9.
Number 9.
Oh, I'm getting thing. Right, who's my big 5 again? I said Jeff Hornacek. God, these names in one shoulder out the other, in one ear out the other.
Yeah.
Mitchell. Can't forget that.
Yes. Number 16. Only 4 seasons.
That's incredible.
Is quick. Joe Ingles will be up there.
Are you saying him?
I thought I said him already. Number 22. You
said him already.
Yeah. Try to start up there.
Trying to think 20s, 2000s. Paul Millsap.
Millsap. Yes. Yeah. Number 15.
I'm struggling now. I'm thinking of players around that 3,000 mark.
You got to think, are you going to stay put though, Carl? That's the question.
No, all 30 have got nothing. No.
Damn. Okay.
You're on 14. You're on 14 to be fair. 14.
That's
You
very
said I'm
good.
missing. I'm missing number 2 and 4, 5. Did you say?
You're missing 3, 4, 5.
No, he's got 3.
10. Oh, sorry. 4, 5, 10.
I'm struggling. Let's go for Al Jefferson.
Like that.
Number 23.
Very nice.
I feel like I'm missing some of the older ones now. I'm not going to get as many.
By the way, Alex, I love number 10. I completely forgot.
I know. Yeah. That actually came up. I was listening to a pod and the name came up.
How did the name come up?
No, I'm not telling you. I was thinking about saying it, but I was like, no, I'm not going to say it. You'll definitely know who it is, Coco.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many have I got so far? How many names?
15.
That's it.
That's pretty good. That's very good, actually.
I'm trying to think. There's not any of them ones I think will be around there. I'm thinking like shooters over time. I know that Clarkson's not been there long enough. I mean, I'm thinking in my head Alec Burks, but I don't know if he's top 30.
Are you looking in?
I'll go for it. Alec Burks, another one more.
Take Alex. Don't. Gosh, I was hoping you wouldn't say it.
I think
16.
I'll retire
That's
there.
very good.
I think I'll retire there.
Alex Burks was 26th.
Oh, who's 30?
So overall,
Somebody you
you've
know.
got 16th, 30. Yeah, Mr. CJ Miles.
Okay, I wouldn't have guessed it. Who are the top big ones I missed in the end?
So some geezer called Daryl Griffith. No idea who he is.
Geezer.
12,000 points, 10 seasons. And then 5th is Thurl Bailey, 10,000 points, 10 seasons. Again, no.
I feel like I should know it, but I don't. Fair enough.
Number 10, 7 seasons with the Utah Jazz, 7,000 points. The Turkish Mehmet Okur.
Okay. Yeah.
All-star as well. He was an all-star.
Was he an all-star?
Yeah.
Fucking hell. How shit must the centers have been? Golly.
You're starting to sound like Shaq.
Yeah.
Touche. You also got Ricky Green, Byron Russell, Matt Harping, Mark Eaton, Jeff Malone, Rich Keeley, Aaron James, Alec Burks, Bob Hansen, Jeff Wilkins,
Richard Jefferson then.
Greg Ostertag, also former Orlando Magic boy. So that rounds up the top 30. You got more than 50%, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's tricky because 3,000
shooting like the Jazz, bro. Shooting like the Jazz.
Yeah.
What do you reckon's better, your Utah knowledge or your Arsenal knowledge?
Oh, Arsenal knowledge, 100%, definitely.
Oh gosh, sorry to hear that. Oh, gosh.
Well,
I would ask you to name me Arsenal Champions League winning squad, but you know.
Oh, and I think we're gonna have to end it there.
Where's that leave meeting button?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to end it there. I want to say a massive thank you to Mr. Evans, the geography genius, the Photoshop connoisseur. Great knowledge about the Jazz, man, and hopefully they can actually produce in the playoffs and not get bounced in the first round, and maybe get some revenge on LeBron.
Never know. Looking forward to it. Just see what happens, I suppose. Hopefully a deep playoff run.
Final question: who will get further in the playoffs this year, Utah or Philly?
Ooh, question.
I can't even make the joke that the East is rubbish anymore because it's not.
Have you seen 4 to 8?
I think Philly. I think Philly will go further. I think they got a good chance.
Carl, that's why I've got you on the pod. Well done, man. Yeah, from the sixth man, from House Lasky, and from Carl, it is over and out.
Peace.